We're pleased to be joined now by Nate Adams, film critic at theonlycritic.com, to talk about movies and more. We're pleased to be joined by him. Nate, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Tyler.
So we're approaching the fall season. It's not usually a very fast-paced and interesting season for movies. It's definitely not the Christmas season, the holiday season, and summer. But are there movies that people should be excited for coming up here in the fall, or should be looking out for and maybe consider heading to the theaters to watch?
Yeah, so you're right in that the fall season is usually not robust. It's usually kind of quiet down, and there's film festivals happening. You have Telluride in August, Toronto Film Festival happens in September, and those film festivals kind of set up the picture for the rest of the year. And so those festivals are happening, but this year is very unique because a lot of films that were pushed because of the pandemic, a lot of them, your James Bond's No Time to Die, your Venom, Let Them Be Carnage, Dune, all those films got pushed into the fall because studios were optimistic that the state of the country and the health of, the world would be in a much better place. Although that's still kind of up for debate right now, it looks like a lot of these film release dates, for the most part, are stick with a few caveats. So Venom, Let Them Be Carnage, which is a sequel to Venom, starring Tom Hardy, which is the Sony Spider-Man universe, is coming out as of right now on October 15th. It was supposed to come out September 24th. They pushed it up a couple weeks. Now there are rumors circling again that Sony might be pushing it to January. There's the Addams Family 2 sequel, which is an animated film that's coming out October 1st, although MGM just recently announced they are going to go day and date with it, which means it is going to be available to rent at home because a lot of children under the age of 12 cannot be vaccinated, and some states are imposing mandates, so that kind of limits that audience. So you're not going to see a lot of exclusive family-friendly titles coming to theaters. But as far as what to look out for, I'm really excited for Top Gun Maverick, which is supposed to come out in November. The aforementioned James Bond No Time to Die, which is honestly ironic that its name is No Time to Die because No Time to Come Out has been pushed about 8 times. And I think now the MGM is kind of in a bind because every time a studio people don't know this, but every time the studio pushes their release date, so James Bond is the perfect example, is that when it's pushed its release date, it had all these tie-ins already set up with Lexus dealers and Rolex, like all these merchandise tie-ins. So every time a movie gets pushed, it's a complete restart of that film's marketing campaign, which costs like hundreds of millions of dollars. And they have just pushed it so many times that I really think that at this point, they really can't afford to do it again. So I think that release date sticks. I'm a big Edgar Wright fan, so I'm excited to see his Last Night in Soho. And then the teenager in me, the adolescent, is really excited to see the fourth Jackass film, Jackass Forever. Johnny Knoxville and all those crazy guys doing some fun stunts. So I'm a sucker for those kind of things.
We're joined by Nate Adams. He's a film critic. You can find his work on theonlycritic.com. He's also a Rotten Tomatoes film critic as well. Joining us today on the MegaCast. And so you mentioned the pushing back of some of these blockbuster films being released due to the COVID pandemic. Over the summer, more of these were starting to get released on more regular schedules after they were scheduled for postponed release over the summer. Now with the situation that we have, given the Delta variant and the spread of COVID-19 being on an uptick, not only here in the state of Michigan, but certainly in greater capacity across other parts of the U.S., are we at a point now where theaters are starting to get concerned that they may be affected again by more apprehension to go to the theater, or by potential regulations and shutdowns coming back, not just in Michigan necessarily, but really across the board? And how are they maybe reacting to that?
I think we're just kind of at a wait and see approach right now. If you ask any theater owner, everybody's optimistic because, like I said, the fall is very, very, very robust this year, which is very unusual. It's a strong, strong fall lineup that really could kind of keep theaters floating until the Christmas corridor if everything goes as planned. So Marvel next week is a big test. There's a big test next week. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is coming out via Marvel Studios film next Friday, Labor Day weekend, which the Labor Day corridor has notoriously been slow as it is. I think, believe it or not, the biggest opening weekend for Labor Day weekend was Rob Zombie's Halloween in like 2007 with like $30 million, and it's held on to that for a long time. So that just shows you how not busy that stretch is. So that's going to be a test because Disney also made the decision not to release the film at home via either Disney Plus or streaming video on demand release. It is just exclusively in theaters. And we saw with these last 2 weeks with the film Free Guy starring Ryan Reynolds that theatrical exclusivity seems to be a crucial point, because films like Black Widow and Jungle Cruise, all those films, Space Jam: A New Legacy, all those films opened with an at-home streaming component. And you would notice that they would have big opening weekends, not so much Jungle Cruise, but Black Widow, and they have good opening weekends, and then they dropped like 70% on their second weekends because everybody had already seen it at home, or the diehard fans already came out. That didn't happen with Free Guy. Free Guy actually had the best second weekend hold of the summer, so it shows longevity. So, but it also helps that a lot of people are reacting to the film and seem to really enjoy it. And that, like I said, the only place that they can see it is in a theater, which is important. So going forward, that is going to be crucial. If Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings kind of has a so-so box office weekend next weekend for the long Labor Day weekend, you're going to start seeing a lot of studios making the decision whether or not they're going to keep their film in theaters exclusively, or they're going to push it, or they're going to do both, do day and date. But at this point, a lot of this product is getting old and has been sitting on the shelf for a while. They have to start making a judgment call, and if it's not going to get better we're not going to get back to 2019 levels at least until next year. So it's just whether or not the studios are willing to take that chance. And also, nowadays we have to judge, the metrics are different, right? Box office doesn't necessarily mean as much as it did back in the day, right? You would see a movie open, had a good opening weekend, it made money, but now you have to ask yourself, well, it has a streaming component attached to it. Did it attract subscribers? There was a lot of talk of the Suicide Squad a couple weeks ago. Did not do very well box office wise, but then there's the argument, well, did it attract subscribers for HBO Max? And I think that is where the new metric of success is going to be.
Well, and as these films continue to have their release dates pushed back, it also causes a reaction, not just for the studios and for distributors, for the theaters, and of course for the other brands that are partnering with these films in marketing campaigns. It also has I would presume it also has a major effect on the fans that are going to go and watch these films. Are you finding that, or are theaters and distributors finding that fans have become less eager to go to the theater with these release dates being pushed back, or less likely to see these films because they're being pushed back so many times?
So I think your diehard Marvel fans prove this with Black Widow's opening weekend being like $80 million, and we'll see how Shang-Chi does next week. Those people are always going to go to the movies no matter what. They're going to be there first, like 45-day window, which is what they're talking about, is going to be the new standard, and that people will go to those people will go. Now you have to get the people that are still kind of on the fence. If you look at the demos for the movies that are doing really, really well, Fast and Furious 9, Black Widows, like Suicide, all those movies that were doing well, it's the under 35 crowd, predominantly male, that are going to movie theaters. That bodes well for Shang-Chi, but it doesn't necessarily bode well for the Aretha Franklin biopic that opened last week with Jennifer Hudson called Respect. Older moviegoers are still really hesitant to go to the movie theaters. They're still kind of being very, very choosy of what they want to see. So what does that mean? Does that mean adult fare is just going to be relegated to streaming? Probably. And then maybe you'll get something along the lines of a good romantic comedy like a Crazy Rich Asians might sneak in there and kind of surprise everybody. So we just got to work on creating a product that's going to be enough to get, reluctant older moviegoers to come back in the theaters, which is going to be hard. So I'm not sure when that happens and when we get back to that sense of normalcy. Matt Damon's Stillwater, which came out from Focus, which is an adult, it's a specialty label, distribution label, did okay numbers. The Green Knight from A24 did okay numbers, but it's nowhere near where we were before. So it's just, you just got to kind of wait and see to see when we can get those older adults back in the theaters.
We're joined by Nate Adams, film critic at theonlycritic.com, with us today on the MegaCast, and let's just take a look back at summer movies that are still out for distribution in some cases, and some that are finishing up their time in the box office. What were some of the surprise movies of the summer of 2021 that had more sustained success that maybe wasn't expected, and others that were expected to have a better run or be better films that ended up being more of a disappointment?
So I think the biggest disappointment of the summer, and it was kind of unfair to put these expectations on it, but it was In the Heights. It was a musical that Lin-Manuel Miranda of Hamilton wrote before he wrote Hamilton, and Warner Brothers adapted it into a film. And they put so much marketing power into it. They really, really tried to get audience. They did a bunch of advanced screenings. They built word of mouth, and it came out, and like everybody who saw it loved it, but it just fizzled at the box office, did not take off at all. It was projected, I think, in the high 45 millions. They thought maybe it could do that opening weekend with an HBO Max release, and it ended up tanking with like $13 million. Suddenly, a movie that at one point was considered like a Best Picture potential spoiler went from zero to hero and nothing. Again, a couple weeks ago, the Suicide Squad, which debuted on HBO Max, great reviews. Expectations were high that it could really take off and over-index. Opened with 26 million. To put in perspective, the other Suicide Squad that came out in 2016, 2015 was PG-13, was not as much of a fan favorite. Let's just say reviews were pretty bad. Opened to 133 million in its one weekend, and the Suicide Squad isn't even going to come close to matching that number, let alone its entire domestic tally. So that's crazy. Stuff that's kind of been interesting to watch success stories. I mentioned Free Guy. Free Guy is now probably the biggest non-summer tentpole movie of the summer, without a doubt, with its success. A Quiet Place 2 did really well, but also Jungle Cruise, surprisingly to me, did pretty good. It opened with $35 million its opening weekend, and it's legging it out. It's almost to $100 million right now in box office receipts, which is a testament to Dwayne Johnson's continued appeal and his massive following that he has on social media platforms, and he keeps plugging the film. Even though it is available at home, it is still having those solid week-to-week holds, which is pretty impressive to see too. So Jungle Cruise did surprisingly well from where I was sitting looking at the box office numbers.
We're joined by Nate Adams, film critic at theonlycritic.com, with us today on the MegaCast. And Nate, something that's probably a very big interest to people in Detroit and in the state of Michigan is, of course, the Aretha Franklin biopic starring Jennifer Hudson called Respect that will be released soon. And for those that are curious about seeing the film, maybe they're big Aretha Franklin fans, or they're just interested because of the historical ties that Aretha Franklin and her music has, not only to the Detroit area, but all across the state of Michigan. Is this a movie that you believe is worth going to the theaters for, worth seeing, or is this one of those movies that it's, if you're interested, go ahead and see it, and if not, go wait until it comes out and you can view it at home?
Yeah, so Jennifer Hudson is terrific in the film. And I think that if we're talking early Oscar predictions, which I really don't get into the awards side of things, I think that she really does carry the film. And I think Aretha Franklin chose her to play that role, so it was very crucial. To me, though, I didn't really connect with the film, and that's just me. And I always tell people that even though I don't necessarily like something, it's all subjective. It's all an opinion. So if someone is really wants to go out and see the film and support theaters, obviously go do that, But for me, it just kind of was all over. I didn't really like Bohemian Rhapsody either. But Respect was another film for me that it took a prolific icon and it tried to throw so much at the screen, and not all of it stuck for me. It was it felt really, really disjointed. And there were some aspects of Aretha Franklin's life that it kind of just breezed through. For example, it makes the choice to end the film with her gospel album, which ended up being her biggest hit, which I'm blanking on date, but I want to say it was like the late 70s, maybe early 80s. But she had like 7 albums after that were monster hits, that were huge hits, that the film really doesn't touch on. There's a whole portion of her life where she gets out of alcoholism and she gets out of drug abuse. All that is not covered in the film, which I felt was a huge wasted opportunity. She's a prolific icon, and she means so much to Detroit, and we have a lot of pride. And I know watching the film as a Michigander, I did feel a lot of pride for, wow, like Aretha Franklin came from Michigan, Detroit. Wow, this is great. But there was a lot of subplots and things like that kind of undermined the film overall for me. But if you want to see it, of course, check it out for yourself.
Nate Adams joins us on the MegaCast. He is a film critic at theonlycritic.com. And Nate, just another couple minutes with you before we'll say goodbye today. And so as we're heading into the fall and into the rest of 2021, there are a lot of superhero movies that are always coming out, and they get a lot of the big draw, and they're the movies that a lot of people are clamoring to go to the theaters for. I have, of course, a contrarian opinion to that. I have a contrarian opinion. I'm not a big superhero movie fan. And so,
oh, wow.
My contrarian opinion, and that's why I went to this tension shot over here, and we'll go back to our regular shot. Looking forward to the rest of the year. What are some movies for people like me that are not big on the superhero movies that would be of great interest, or movies they should be waiting for and be looking out for to go see in the theaters?
Yeah, so I mentioned Last Night in Soho, which is we got stuff from Denis Villeneuve, we got Edgar Wright, we got Wes Anderson. We have Adam McKay films. There's a lot of filmmakers, bold and audacious filmmakers that have stuff. Paul Thomas Anderson's got a film coming out at the end of this year. So I'm a big Wes Anderson fan. I love his quirky style. He's got The French Dispatch coming out at the end of October. Edgar Wright's got Last Night in Soho. Dune, which has potential to be kind of like this Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings-esque series, where it could be expansive and have this big fantasy epic if all goes according to plan. I am also a big horror fan, so I am excited for Halloween Kills, which is the next installment in the Michael Myers franchise. And as we have seen throughout the pandemic, that horror movies still are doing relatively well. I think the Candyman sequel that is coming out this Friday, which I did get a chance to see last night, and it is very, very good, and I'm excited for people to see it. That is also, I think, going to perform really, really well. But also too, Tyler, since you're not a superhero fan, look to the streamers. Netflix has some 45 movies coming out in this corridor, including a film called Don't Look Back, which is directed by Adam McKay, and it has Leonardo DiCaprio, Jonah Hill, Meryl Streep, Jennifer Lawrence, Chris Evans, Donald Glover. Has an insane cast. So there's going to be a lot of top quality premium content that is going to be available in the homes as well as theaters, which that probably going forward will be the new normal. Will those films get released in theaters? I'm not sure, but I'm saying that there's going to be a robust slate of options, not just for the non-superhero fans, in theaters and at home. So that is something to get excited about, regardless of if things are going to get moved or not. We'll have to wait and see what happens with this whole the pandemic.
Well, if there's a movie in theaters, if there's a movie on streaming services, Nate Adams will be a film critic that will have something to say about it. And you can read all of his reviews at theonlycritic.com. Nate, thanks for being with us today.
Tyler, thanks so much. Happy to come back. Maybe in the meantime, check out one superhero movie. Like maybe
I'll try.
Or yeah. Give it a chance.
Yeah, and I don't dislike them. I'm not always.
You're not invested.
I'm not invested in it. I'll watch.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
It's probably for the best.